This is the Our Auto Expert Podcast. Find us on air, online, on mobile, and on your smart speaker. Please subscribe at ourautoexpert.com. Our Auto Expert. Our Auto Expert. Our Auto Expert. Our Auto Expert. Now, here's the host of Our Auto Expert. Our Auto Expert. Nick Miles.
Welcome to this week's show. There is a lot of interesting stuff going on. I can tell you that we've had an exciting week driving some pretty awesome cars. We're going to get to talk to some pretty awesome people in this week's show. And we're also going to find out a lot of stuff that's going on in the car industry. First of all, Jen, how often do you get sleepy? Jen's here. Truck girl Jen. How often do you get sleepy when you drive?
Hardly ever, to be honest with you. I don't get really tired when I drive.
You don't drive that far, though, do you?
Yes, I do.
You do?
It takes me an hour to come to your house.
All right, that's an hour.
Yeah.
Like 4 hours or 8 hours. No? So, when you drive, you never get sleepy.
Not really.
And when I do like 650 miles in a day, I get sleepy.
Well, yeah.
I get sleepy.
I like to rock out to the radio.
Do you?
Oh, yeah.
I have this picture of you now, just headbanging as you drive. Your long hair.
Rap music, rock music, you name it.
Crazy.
People probably make fun of me as they drive by.
Well, your truck's so high, I don't think anyone can see you
That's
actually
true.
in your vehicle. You have this big old lifted truck. We're going to talk about how you control yourself while you drive and not get sleepy. And if you do get sleepy, some of the cool ways which you can avoid that. Supposedly, Americans are supposed to get between 7 and 8 hours sleep each week. Do they? Do you?
No. Do you?
I'm pushing myself. 1 in 3 adults don't get enough sleep, but I push myself to get 7 hours, but I often only get 4.
Do you feel good, though, at 4?
Yeah, I'm kind of that hyper individual.
Me too.
That's always, when I sit down and anchor on the morning news, it's like at 2:30 in the morning, I'm like, hey, everybody, what's going on? And everyone's like, calm down, it's 2:30 in the morning.
Coffee.
Yeah. They're like, get this guy in the studio and mic him up, and we'll put our headphones on in the booth and leave him alone. Adults are not getting enough sleep. We're going to find out a new survey that was done with 10 myths that you think that help you stay awake, and those are disparaged and blown away by this new survey, but they also will tell you ways in which you can get enough sleep and feel better. This is a real problem that Americans have, is sleep, more as the workday increases. We'll get into that in this week's show, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. We've been driving some cool cars, the G-Wagon and the Hyundai Palisade. We're also going to find out a little bit more stuff about some of those cars. We're going to look at motorsports. We're going to talk to Perry Stern from MSN about the upcoming, or about Pebble Beach. If you're not familiar with Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance, which goes on, it's probably the premier concours in the country, and there are a lot of great concours around the country, but the most premier one is in Pebble Beach.
Yes.
And this is what happens. All these car companies invest huge amounts of money to take the latest cool cars down there, and these people walk in who have unspeakable money, and they go, I'll take that one, I'll take that one, and I'll take that one. Here's $1 million. Thanks. Goodbye. Mm-hmm. That is unbelievable. But some of the cars released are also really, really cool. We will talk to Laura Adams. She's a safety and educational analyst. She'll talk about the survey that says 44% of Americans say they would ride in a self-driving Uber. But 70% say they wouldn't own a self-driving car. One of the biggest things that self-driving car people have the problems with, the companies that are developing, is Americans just aren't comfortable with it. Uber have had a pretty horrific accident in a self-driving vehicle. We hear about Tesla accidents all the time. Tesla just announcing that Netflix is now going to be available in their vehicles at some point. Is this a good and fresh idea, or is this just a nightmare? Should people not be more distracted from the road? I know how I feel. We'll be finding out how you feel. And Anton Wahlman joining us, and we'll pick up this conversation with him a little bit. He is our independent analyst and expert, and Anton will talk a little bit about this, but we'll also talk about what's going on in the world of self-driving cars, electric cars, and sales figures. It is down this year. We're likely to be somewhere around 1 million cars down on the sales figures. We're close to 18 million the last couple of years. This year looks like it's going to be somewhere around 17 million, 16.5 million, somewhere in that vicinity. Car sales down by 1 million. 1 million's a lot of cars.
It is.
But America also buys a huge number of vehicles. But if you're considering buying an SUV, I will tell you that the two that I have been driving, pretty unbelievable. I drove the new Hyundai Palisade, which starts at $31,550. This is their new 3-row SUV. It comes in 3 different trim levels. The limited version, at the top of the market, $45,000. If you consider some of these SUVs cost about $90,000 for a 3-row SUV, that's a pretty unbelievable price. So it works out to about $359 a month for 36 months on a lease, with probably about 3.5 down, so 3,500 down on that lease. That to me is pretty unbelievable deal. The car is spectacular. I think they're going to turn the 3-row SUV market topsy-turvy with 26 miles a gallon on the highway. The other vehicle that I've been driving, completely the other end of the scale, starts at $124,500, the new G-Wagon from Mercedes. The first time they refreshed it since 1972. 3 components remain the same in the new G-Wagon that they were in the last G-Wagon. That is, do you remember what they are, Jen? No. The door handles, the headlight washers, and the rear tire cover.
Yeah.
Those remain the same. But this car is quality. And you slam the doors.
Gorgeous
in this thing.
inside.
It is. They made it. It was real uncomfortable. It hadn't been updated since 1972. It was super lumpy.
Yeah.
But now they've made it really, really nice to drive. I can't tell you how excited I am about this new G-Wagon. It is amazing. But you're probably going to need somewhere around $175,000 if you kit this vehicle out the way that you actually want to ride in it. That's a lot of money with a 4-liter V8 engine on the inside. But it does have 577 horsepower before you get too crazy. And that's just the beginning. That's where it all starts. All right, so coming up next, we're going to talk about what it is like to drive sleepy and how you can avoid that. We're not getting enough sleep, people. We have some resolutions to you. There's a company also that has an app that can help you with that. I get sleepy when I drive, but I do the power nap thing. If I have to drive 300 or 400 miles, I'll pull over and take a power nap. All right, I'm going to take one right now. We'll be back in a moment. This is Our Auto Expert.
You're listening to Our Auto Expert.
Welcome back to the show. So some interesting research has been done into sleep and how much sleep we actually need. In fact, more than a third of American adults are not getting enough sleep on a regular basis, according to a new study in the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. They say that this study documents an estimated self-reporting from Americans that shows that 7 hours is what most people need in all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine and Sleep Research Society recommends that adults 18 to 60 get that 7 hours of sleep each night to promote optimal health. And sleeplessness can cause lots of health issues. We know about chronic things like diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, and frequent mental illness. But what about driving? When you get to driving, it's a whole different subject. People getting in their cars who haven't had enough sleep are not awake enough, and this is the time in which you're driving what could potentially be a lethal weapon. You have to make sure that that lethal weapon is in control and that you do the right things. Well, there is some people who've been looking into this. Peter Freedman is from the UK. We talked to him there now. Peter, you've actually you've made a film about sleep, but it's not sort of the film that we'd expect, right?
That's right, yes. I made a film for Calm.com, the meditation and sleep app, called Baba Land. as in La La Land, and we marketed it as the dullest movie ever made and the ultimate insomnia cure. And that's because it was a 8-hour slow motion movie which consisted of footage of sheep standing in a field doing nothing but grazing. But if you look on IMDb, the movie website, it actually has higher ratings than some winners of the best Oscar picture.
It's probably helping people sleep, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Well, as you correctly said, insomnia and sleep problems are a modern epidemic, and so we at Calm, to discuss this, and we tried to answer the question, what would be the ultimate insomnia cure? And the answer was La La Land, the 8-hour slow motion movie about sheep standing in a field doing nothing, which was, I think it did live up to its billing as being the dullest movie ever made.
Perfect. But one of the things that you did at Calm is you did a survey, which were 3 of the most widely held sleep myths among the poll respondents overall, and especially when it relates to driving. What were those myths? What came out of that survey?
We did an international survey of over 4,000 Americans and Brits and French respondents, and we presented them with 10 common myths about sleep, and we asked them to respond to them by saying whether they were true, false, or don't know. Interestingly, more Americans than other nationalities are inclined to believe the myth that alcohol before bed helps you sleep better, which it definitely doesn't. And Americans are also more likely to believe the myth that you can catch up on missed sleep by sleeping in at weekends. But fortunately, they're less likely to believe the myth that we each swallow a few spiders while we're asleep. A few spiders each year, which is, I think, surprisingly widely believed in France, but only 25% of Americans believe that. But anyway, to answer your question, the 3 most widely held sleep myths, the ones that people were most inclined to rate as true, well, the single most widely believed sleep myth is also the single most dangerous, and that is that lowering the car windows or turning up the air conditioning will help you stay awake when you're tired and driving. The National Sleep Foundation says those ideas are ineffective and can be dangerous to anyone who is driving while feeling drowsy or sleepy, as well as to their passengers and others on the road. If you're feeling tired while driving, pull off the road in a safe rest area and take a nap for 15 to 45 minutes. But the American Sleep Association says further that even a 20-minute power nap in a safe area will at best give you another 30 minutes or so of safe driving. So even taking a nap in a safe area is only a temporary solution. And the only real solution is to subscribe to Calm, the meditation and sleep app, and make sure that you use our sleep meditations and sleep music and our bedtime stories for grown-ups to get a proper night's sleep every night. And that's the only real solution.
So what what the result is really that there isn't a quick fix to sleep. I mean, you just have to manage your life better and do some things to get a proper night's sleep, because all these quick fixes, they just don't work.
Yeah, well, I think having a nap can provide a short-term solution, according to the American Sleep Association, keep you going for another 30 minutes or so of safe driving. And drinking coffee can also help reduce drowsiness, but even it needs around 30 minutes before it takes effect. And again, it only works for a short time. So the National Sleep Foundation concludes that the best single prevention for drowsy driving is, as you've said or indicated, is a good night's sleep before you before your trip, which again comes back to the need to subscribe to Calm and listen to our bedtime stories and sleep meditations, because that's the best guarantee of getting a good night's sleep.
Now, one of the things that we've also looked at is the amount of accidents caused by sleep. It's most surveys now saying that increased accidents, especially the CDC, the government website cdc.com, saying that driving, while you're tired is more likely to cause an accident, up by 24% in some cases as well. One of the biggest problems is as people are pushed to get more work done and get less sleep with growing families, and also the fact that work hours are increasing, some people pulling double jobs, they don't have the time to get quality sleep. Now, is Calm going to actually help people get better quality sleep, even if it's over the same time period?
Oh, well, definitely. Calm started as a meditation app, and its meditations on Calm are still hugely popular. But we've seen an interesting shift over time that more and more people are using Calm. Now the majority of people are using Calm to help them sleep. And our sleep stories, which are bedtime stories for grown-up, have now been listened to, I think it's over 160 million times. And they're narrated by people like Matthew McConaughey and Stephen Fry, the British actor. We have a lot of big celebrity names. But, the evidence is, the hard data shows that people are using Calm more and more to help them sleep. So we are evolving from being originally a meditation app to being a meditation and sleep app, and if anything, even more of a sleep app nowadays. So yes, people... And Calm is now the single most popular health and fitness app in the world. And so, that's the kind of hard data that shows that people are using it to help them sleep. And we get deluged with emails and social media posts from people thanking us for helping them, help cope with stress and depression often, but especially above all with their sleep problems and helping them get to sleep. The only problem with our bedtime sleep stories is that...
Oh, we seem to have faded out somehow with Peter. Peter Freedman from sleep.com. Peter, thank you. I'm going to try the app out, see if it makes me a better driver. Definitely don't like the air conditioning on a cool down. I like the car much warmer than everybody else. Try it, calm.com. I'd love to hear how that goes for you. Coming up, more stuff, including some of the cool cars.
You're listening to the Our Auto Expert podcast.
So we were talking a little bit about cool cars that we've been driving this week. Jen, you weren't a big fan of the G-Wagon.
It's a lot of money.
It's the money part that you don't like.
Okay, if you look at the G-Wagon, to me it's like, what's the first thing you think of?
Awesome.
No, I mean, really?
Amazing.
That's the first thing you think of?
It's so capable off-road.
Okay, it reminds me of watching like the shows in the safari with the giraffes
Yep.
Okay, that's where it belongs.
And I want to be on the safari with the giraffes. New G-Wagon, first it came around in 1972. The vehicle was still used by people like the Nigerian police force as their main vehicle. This vehicle was made on the same lines, has been made on the same lines since 1972. But for the first time since that date, they refreshed it for 2019. A brand new G-Wagon. I was in Detroit when they announced it with Arnold Schwarzenegger. They showed the new G-Wagon. They suggested there may be some electric ones coming in the future. It's an exciting vehicle. They've managed to maintain the looks of the original G-Wagon. Right. I will tell you, I'm looking at it right now in the parking lot. I'm turning around.
It's very stylish.
I actually don't like the silver, the one I'm driving. But
the interior is really pretty. It's a black with that, like a cobalt blue interior. It's really pretty. I like it.
It has a bar on the front too, a cattle bar.
See,
this thing is super capable off-road. I drove it around the deserts in Borrego Springs down in Southern California. This thing did great on the sand. It's got the...
it was good in the mud too.
It's got the three doo-doo axles. You can do all that. So I have
to make fun of you. No, it was fun when we drove it off-road. I really liked it. It's just
It's cutting edge in technology.
It's so militarian.
It's amazingly cool. You know what I really like about it, more than anything else? And I tell people this all the time. So the original G-Wagon had the fender, the indicators on the fender. And they wanted to have this on the new G-Wagon, the indicators on the fender. But they didn't meet pedestrian safety standards. So if you got into an accident where you unfortunately struck a pedestrian, those lights were they didn't want them there because they cause injury. So what Mercedes have done is installed a one-time use light only. So if you have an accident with this vehicle and something touches the light, it will pop inside the fender. And then you have to have it replaced. So it disappears inside the fender.
Okay, that's cool.
So it cannot injure a pedestrian because it's a sharp object. However, last thing we want to do is have a pedestrian versus a G-Wagon. That would be bad.
Yeah, definitely.
Anytime pedestrian versus any vehicle. I mean, looking through pictures of this vehicle online, it's unbelievable. I love the red color, and they come out with this sort of sand color brown too. This new G-Wagon is absolutely phenomenal. And then the LED daytime running lights, which are the ring around the headlights, the whole front grille. I mean, I couldn't be more in love with the vehicle than I am in love with this G-Wagon.
Are you going to buy it?
At $175,000, it's probably not this week's budget. I know that my spouse does not listen to this show, and I could say this now because I'm out there. I have bought another vehicle this week.
Doesn't surprise me.
And it's brand new.
Ooh.
But I haven't
announced it yet.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work out how to bring this up when we get home. So, or at some point when it arrives at the house. But it's not a big deal. I bought a new Honda Rebel motorcycle.
Really?
Yeah. And I went to see my friends at in the motorcycle dealership in Portland, Oregon, in Beaverton Motorcycle. And I just really like it.
Did you keep your Grom?
Yeah, I was going to say. So I told them I was trading my Grom in.
Yeah.
My Grom needs a new battery because I can't keep a charge on it, so I have to run with it and let the clutch out and start it like the old-fashioned way.
I love it.
For a fat guy, it's really hard, just so you know. So I have to run with this bike and let it out. And it's sometimes embarrassing because if I'm at I was in an intersection right by the radio station here the other day, and I let the clutch out a little fast, and it stalled, and I'm sitting in the middle of traffic. And so I have to pull it off the side of the road and then find a hill to ride down to get it to start because anyway, it's a whole thing. You don't want to know. So I bought this new Honda Rebel, and I'm super excited. I got a great deal on it. The fact is, I'm not quite sure how to tell my other half that there is another. This sand color, like matte sand color. There's only 3 colors online: a dark blue, a bright orange, and a matte sort of sand color. I bought that. Oh, and also driving the Hyundai Palisade, which is pretty phenomenal. The tech inside it. I would actually own this as a vehicle. I could buy this. I might even think about trading in my. No, I bet not. I was going to trade in my Lexus and buy one of these. I have a Lexus GX. Oh,
you should just, do leases, short-term leases on everything.
I need to go get some ice on me right now because things are getting out of control. We're going to talk more cars coming up as Our Auto Expert returns.
You're listening to Our Auto Expert.
Welcome back to the show. Self-driving cars. Interesting topic. We talk about it on the show every week. We have several experts who helping develop self-driving cars, several experts who are working to look at legislation of self-driving cars. But interestingly enough, DriversEd.com did a survey that says 44% of Americans say they would ride in a self-driving Uber. Laura Adams joining us on the phone. Laura, first of all, let's ask you, the reality of self-driving cars, they are probably still quite a long way off?
That's right. Yeah, I think we're, a little bit more optimistic, or have been a little bit more optimistic about the availability of these cars. And as the time has gone by, we've seen that, yes, there have been advances, and we have had some more types of features that have been added to vehicles that make them semi-autonomous, but the likelihood of it being completely autonomous is getting pushed out a little bit further into the future for various reasons.
Now, self-driving cars are here. They're developed. They're car companies. I've ridden in them. I've been on several events where these cars, even back in 2000 and I would say 15, I was in California and went for a ride in a Nissan Leaf that was fully autonomous. They had it off-road on a special event course with cars pulling out, going to four-way stops. The vehicle did everything. The fact is, it's not about the technology. The technology exists. It's mostly about legislation and about people being accepting of them. We've had a rough ride when it comes to self-driving cars. As soon as something goes wrong with a Tesla or with Uber, everybody gets upset, and the opinions about whether they'd be in one tend to change.
Absolutely. Yes, as you said, there's a lot of testing going on, and I have seen those tests as well in California, seeing the Google cars out on the road, and it's very spooky. You look over, and there's no one in the driver's seat. A lot of testing going on, but whether they will be available for consumers is a whole different story, and it is due to legislation, also due to insurance. The insurance industry is really not sure what to do about these vehicles as they become more automated. It kind of shifts the liability from the driver back to the manufacturer. So there's a lot of change that's going to happen within the insurance industry before these are available, in mass quantities.
Do the incidents like the Uber taxi striking somebody in Arizona, do you see a spike as soon as that happens, or as soon as a Tesla is involved in a crash, those type of things?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, certainly it's very scary for consumers who think, oh, my gosh, what will happen if I get in one of these vehicles and it's not operating the way I expect? And, I think there really has to be, a lot of cases, they will become less safe before they become more safe. Unfortunately, there's just a learning curve there, and there are going to be tests that will fail. So hopefully that will be done in safe situations and in situations where consumers are not involved. So as much testing as we can do ahead of time, obviously the better. But, even with the features that are in vehicles today, the semi-autonomous vehicles, they can fail as well. I mean, nothing is 100% when we're talking about something mechanical. So we have to be going on a bit of faith, as consumers, that eventually this is going to be a technology that will keep us safer in the future rather than less safe. And we know most of the accidents on the road are due to human error. I mean, we hear statistics like 94% of vehicle accidents are due to human error. So we have to believe that if we take that factor out of it, and human drivers are not behind the wheel, or at least not mostly behind the wheel, that should be one solution to making roads safer.
Now let's look at a couple of other things that are going on. First of all, 35% of people said they'll never ride in one of these vehicles. It was 70% at one time, so people are becoming more used and more comfortable with it?
I think so. I think as the idea of autonomous vehicles are in the media and, like conversations that we're having today, as people hear more and more about them, they do begin to warm up to the idea. So I think it's going to be a slow adoption. I know many people who say, personally, friends of mine that say, oh, I would never own a self-driving car, nor would I get in one. And I'm just the opposite. I can't wait for it. I feel like it'll be something that will really, change my life for the better. So it really does depend on your perspective and maybe whether you like to drive. A lot of people just really love being in control of a vehicle and can't imagine giving that up for a variety of reasons. I, on the other hand, don't really like to drive that much, so the idea of a self-driving car really appeals to me.
One of the things that I also look at is how this changes with things like municipalities. I mean, initially, self-driving cars do one thing, and that is not break the law. So they don't speed. They don't have parking issues. Since they're self-driving, they can go recharge themselves or go home or do another errand. They don't run red lights, and that means that suddenly no parking, no red light fines, no speeding fines. Municipalities' income is going to start to disappear. So there is no stimulation for local municipalities, for state governments to start issuing licenses for self-driving vehicles, because ultimately they're going to see a big drop in their income.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, that is definitely something that will need to be replaced in some form or fashion for the municipalities. So there is a lot of legislation to be worked out, and also, again, the insurance companies are really, not sure how to handle this. And so, I think as consumers, what we can do is really just stay on the lookout, and if you are interested in these features, try them out. If you purchase a car that has some type of technology in it, the Audi A8 is the one that is really the most advanced. It's kind of progressed up the ladder of automation at the highest level at this point. Try it out. If that's something that, appeals to you and that's a car that you can afford to drive, maybe giving that a go will give you at least some sense of what it would be like to have a car that could take over. So I think it's exciting, and I hope we'll see some progress, but I do think it's going to happen further into the future than we originally thought.
I noticed in the survey it says 87% say that self-driving cars remains essential for a driver to be behind the wheel and in control of the vehicle with a license. Is that still the fact, or are people now willing to get into a vehicle that doesn't even have a steering wheel?
Yeah, I mean, we really haven't had that experience yet, as consumers, and so I think it's a pretty foreign idea, but I think what we are seeing is people are trying to get on board with the idea. We're seeing people say that all of these semi-autonomous features do make the road safer. For the most part, people do believe that, things like cruise control and the lane switching technologies that make you able to sense cars that are near you or behind you, close to you, those are making the road safer. So I do think if people try out these features for themselves and do find that they are helping them be safer, that it is going to make them feel a little bit more confident about getting in a car that doesn't have a driver, even getting in an Uber, maybe that's got some semi-autonomous features. So it's slowly happening, and I think it's, something that we just have to try to pursue the legislation and be supportive of the testing that's going on.
Do you think that the integration of non-self-driving cars, our regular cars that we drive today, and self-driving cars is going to be the difficulty? Because to me, the cars, they talk about self-driving cars doing huge amounts of speed and going very fast, but the biggest problem is what happens when you have vehicles that are traveling 150 miles an hour down a freeway and you get somebody getting on there with a 1967 Mustang who's doing 55. Does that then become an issue?
It really does. So I do think that as, we get to a tipping point where there are more and more fully autonomous or semi-autonomous cars on the road that can be in sync, and they will actually be networked. That's kind of the vision for these vehicles. They will be able to sense each other and be able to know when another vehicle is perhaps getting too close, or you're about to, get close to each other in an intersection or on a highway. Once you have that networking feature where cars are talking to each other and they understand where they are, in a 3D environment, they can truly understand where cars are all around them. We become safer as a group. So it is going to be a very interesting, shift to get more and more of these cars on the road. And like any other technology, the more people who are using it and the more kind of that tipping point occurs, you get to a situation where you really do see that it changes your life. And I think that's the point where we hope that these cars really will make us more safe, and we'll see less accidents and deaths on the road.
Do you think that somebody like Elon Musk has jumped the gun a little bit now, doing things like installing Netflix inside vehicles? Is this just another distraction, another reason to worry about self-driving cars?
Yeah, I mean, those types of features are definitely a bit hopeful, perhaps. We certainly don't want to encourage people to be watching Netflix while they're in their vehicle, especially if they are semi-autonomous. I mean, if you have a truly autonomous vehicle where the driver doesn't have to get involved, yes, I can see watching movies or Netflix in a vehicle, but at this point, we know that probably could be more dangerous than helpful. So, yeah, I do think he's definitely pushing the envelope and trying to be an innovator. But again, it's going to be further out than than he probably estimates at this point. And again, that's probably a good thing. There's a lot of kind of kinks that have to be worked out with legislation and insurance before consumers are really going to be ready to adopt this technology in mass.
We're talking to Laura Adams. She is a safety and education analyst at driversed.com. Laura, when do we really think that a fully autonomous self-driving car will be here? Do we have a date? Do we have a somewhere on the calendar we can put an X?
There's so many different estimates out there. Some people are saying, as quickly as next year we could see a fully autonomous car. I think that's probably pretty hopeful. I would say looking out maybe 5 or 10 years is probably a more realistic, time span. Again, there's a lot that's got to happen to fill in the gaps with all of the what-if scenarios. What if the car is not performing as we expect? What if, again, as you mentioned with municipalities and cities, there are issues there that are unexpected for them. There's just a lot of kind of issues to think through, and certainly the insurance companies are trying to catch up, but we're not really seeing a whole lot of change, where they're concerned. So, they really don't know what to expect. They don't know what the accident rate will be. There are just a lot of unknowns there. So I would say, probably 10 years is probably a pretty good estimate if I had to ballpark it. And I'm the first to say I'll be ready and ready to get one when they are available.
I think we're probably both ends of the scale there. I don't want to ever give up my self-driving. Give up my car for self-driving. Laura Adams, safety and education analyst at driversed.com. Thank you very much. We're talking about self-driving cars. I think it will be a very gradual thing, Jen. I think what will end up happening is it'll be a little bit more, and then finally there'll be some sort of level 4 or 5 vehicle. So 4 still has to have a driver behind the wheel, 5 has no driver behind the wheel, and you may not even have a steering wheel. But most of the cars I'm seeing, things like the iNext and BMW, all those things actually have a steering wheel. You can take over driving, so they're sort of level 4 vehicles. Right now, the most advanced self-driving car we have is level 2. So there's level 1 through 5. The most advanced is level 2, which is really some of the features where you can take your hands off the wheel for a few seconds, and it does a lot of things. It'll keep you in the lane. If you drive some of the new Acuras and Mercedes, or like the G-Wagon, you can keep your hands. You can see the vehicle actually does lane tracing, and it keeps you in behind another vehicle. We've got a while to go, people. Stand by. More Our Auto Expert coming up next.
You're listening to the Our Auto Expert podcast.
Welcome back to the show. There's a massive lack of women in the auto industry. I think I went to a dealership the other day. They had one woman salesperson. That's when I took Noah. And Megan's joined us for the second hour of the show.
Hello.
So I took Noah car shopping, which we can talk about later. That's a whole thing.
It is a whole thing.
Her 19-year-old son?
18.
18-year-old son is buying a car. That's a whole thing. So it was the salesperson, Krista, at Mini of Portland. Amazing. She helped me out. Great person. She helped Noah out. Then also, there are very few women journalists in the industry. Jen and I were naming them off in the break. And I think Jen got to 1. I got to about 3 or 4 that I know. That women that do strictly automotive journalism.
Well, I went to an event that is an all-women event.
Yeah. Heels and Wheels.
Heels and Wheels,
and
yeah.
there's like only 15 women there?
No, there's more than 15, but
Was there?
Yeah, I'm not sure how big the group was. I'm going to say like 40 to 50.
And a lot of those bloggers do multiple things. They don't just do automotive, but people that just do automotive, it's very few, and we're trying to encourage more.
That's true.
Women,
it's only a handful.
More women to get involved, along the same lines as what they're trying to do at Athena Racing. Now, founder and executive director of Athena Racing is Loxley Brown. Loxley joining us on the phone. So, Loxley, did you notice a massive lack of women in the automotive industry?
Absolutely. There are so few, and the few female racers that I have now become really great friends with are so supportive of this, just because we do need to get these younger ladies who are in high school interested in automotive and get them into engineering and different paths that can help to just expand and kind of level the playing field in the automotive field.
I actually got to speak to the chief engineer of the Chevrolet Equinox, and that was a woman. And one of the things that she did makes me chuckle, is that she had one thing that she really wanted to do with this vehicle. Of course, it had to perform really well, and it had to be comfortable and meet all things. But she wanted to make sure that the center console in the middle was big enough for her purse. And she showed it to me. And I said, well, you are the woman with the smallest purse that I know.
Did you see mine?
Yeah, Jen's purse, sometimes it takes two people to carry in. Megan's the same.
No, wait. I'm the opposite. Mine is like
I'm just
teeny
kidding.
tiny.
Mine is gigantic.
Yeah, Megan's is gigantic.
She's got the diaper bag.
Anyway, we
Pretty much.
We're getting off the subject. So, what are you doing at Athena Racing to help women get involved in automotive?
So this is a brand new, groundbreaking program that I've put together. It's an extracurricular program for high school ladies to try out for and to become a part of. We are starting it down here in Southern California, and we have applicants who are applying who are as far away from Southern California as New Mexico and Arizona. Like, it's really expanding and getting out there. So it's not only about racing, it's about giving them the foundation for life and their future career. So we are going to be teaching them driving instruction and mechanics. So they are actually going to build a car during this year. So we're also going to be teaching them entrepreneurship and leadership and wellness. Just that everything that takes to round you out and as an adult. Some of the things they don't really teach you in high school or college.
So a pinnacle, starting off with having an interest in automobiles. And the final, once they've completed the program, how will this open doors for them?
So we're going to be getting them in front of a lot of the leaders in the automotive industry. We're going to be doing field trips each training weekend that they're with us. We're going to have 10 different experts from the automotive field in talking to them. So it's going to open them up connection-wise, just having met with, the designers from Mazda and, going to actually tour the manufacturing plant at Virgin Orbit and those types of things. So they're going to have this, connection with leaders in the industry. And as they're applying to get into colleges or to go to different training programs, it'll just pave the way and make it so much easier for them to pursue what they want to do.
Now, if they want to get involved in the program, what are some of the specifications that they need to be aware of?
So they do need to be high school students. They do have to maintain a 3.0 GPA. They do have to have demonstrated interest in automotives, whether it's, they've already started a karting career, or they are in the automotive shop class at their high school, or they, on their own time, are wrenching on cars with their fathers and mothers. They just have to demonstrate that they have this desire and love of automotive.
And how long does the program run? How does it work? Do you have to go to Southern California, and how does somebody apply?
So you do have to be able to get yourself to San Diego. We're going to be based here in San Diego. It's a one-year program, and there is one weekend that we will be training, and that's a Saturday and Sunday. And then there will be another weekend of racing, another Saturday and Sunday of racing. And I'm going to be on the phone with them for an hour each week, just keeping them on track, talking over, different paths that they're working on, because each one's going to be assigned a different education path for each month. It does require some intensity. The girls will have to study for about an hour or two every day. So it is very much like the competitive sports that a lot do, with soccer or softball. It's just in a car instead. And it is a one-year program.
All right. Well, it sounds fun. So how would they apply?
Yeah. Online, they can go to athenaracing.org, and they will see the page on there where the application is. It's a fun application to fill out. There's a few questions that, we'll really get to see their personality. But we're also asking them to put a video up on Instagram, and there's the question they have to answer. So we're going to see how creative they are with being able to be in front of the public eye, because a lot of what we're going to be doing is paying back to our community and being out in the public and doing a lot of speaking regarding STEM-related careers.
All right. Well, good for them. Loxley, thank you for joining us to tell us about some opportunities that some young high school women can get to get into the automotive industry. Would you guys think you would have benefited from that?
Oh, I would have loved this.
Megan's like, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. I'm not that kind of car
I'm just going to
guy.
be honest. No, but I think it's really cool. I mean, there are a lot of times I wish I knew how to take care of certain things with the car.
All right.
But it's so more than that.
That's what
They've
you
got
have.
marketing, photography, public speaking, wellness, safety.
Oh, yeah,
That's what I'm here for. Coming up, Perry Stern from MSN going to talk about Pebble Beach. That's as Our Auto Expert continues.
You're listening to Our Auto Expert.
Welcome back to the show. Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance is probably the biggest Concours d'Elegance that goes on every year. It's where they have classic cars with different classes. They have the Quail, which involves unveiling of brand new supercars and cars that you and I can only dream about owning, or maybe not dream about owning. If you're Jen, they don't unveil trucks there, unfortunately, Jen.
No, that's okay. I like what they are going to unveil, though, this year.
And then there's lots of other events around there, including auctions and reveals, ride and drives, private viewings. They'll be showing the new Aston Martin SUV there and a bunch of other cars. Joining us on the phone to talk about Pebble Beach and the Concours d'Elegance. I guess we should call it Car Week, really. Perry Stern from MSN Auto and Our Auto Expert. Perry, you are a champion of this event. You've hardly missed a breath when it comes to Pebble Beach.
I've gone for the last 12 years. So, yeah, this is, it's kind of car heaven, I think would be the best way to describe it.
Bucket list.
You tell us about Dawn Patrol. This is something that you do every year.
Well, Dawn Patrol is very exciting, and it's grown quite a bit. On the Sunday of the Concours, which is the day of all the judging, and they bring all the cars in, around 5:30 in the morning, which is, stupidly early, a number of people start gathering down where the cars will come in. Haggerty Insurance brings in donuts and coffee. They also pass out a limited number of hats, which then become very prized possessions. I've seen them on eBay for as much as several $100s for a hat. And then the cars start coming in as the sun starts coming up. And these are cars that, if you've never been to an event like this, ranging from, late 1800s to early 1900s all the way through, 1940, 60s. We don't quite get into the 70s, but there are some special classes. For example, there are going to be a number of vehicles that were featured on the cover of Hot Rod magazine over the years. And these, so you're going to have hot rods coming in. You'll have rare Bugattis. You'll have everything you can possibly imagine, Duesenbergs, Rolls Royces, and this year is the 100th anniversary of Bentley. And so there will be a lot of Bentleys.
And Bentley are also having a big celebration. They've rented a house up there, and there'll be a 24/7 party probably for about 4 days.
Exactly. But one of the coolest things about Pebble Beach is there's a group of cars that leave the Seattle area every year in what's called the Motoring Classic. It's the first official event, I guess you could say, of Pebble Beach. And there are about 21 vintage cars that meet up in the Seattle area and take 9 days to drive down to Pebble Beach. And these are cars that you would not typically see on the road. I mean, there's a 1904 Fiat that's going to be doing the drive.
Wow. That's older than I am. These cars, do they have a mechanic?
Barely.
Barely. These cars, do they have a mechanic that accompanies them 24/7?
They do have a truck with repair facilities as well as a trailer that can fit most of the cars in it if necessary.
And how many cars actually don't make it? Are there a number that don't make it?
Actually, it's pretty rare. Most of them do. There may be some that get held up along the way. I actually went with them about 10 years ago. And there's some cars that, didn't leave as early in the morning as others as they were doing repairs, but they would almost always catch up by the end of the day.
All right.
And then they all arrive at the Pebble Beach, at the lodge at Pebble Beach, around 3 in the afternoon on the day before all the festivities begin.
All right. The interesting thing about, I guess, this is that when you see these cars driving down the road and they have to be taken off and something fixed, they were a lot simpler than the modern vehicle. So it's probably, I know that I have a friend that has a Model T and always says all he needs is a hammer and a chisel and he can pretty much fix anything on the car. It's probably a lot easier, right?
I would imagine. And most of the people who own these also know how to fix them. You kind of have to, I think.
Tell us what we're likely to see as far as new cars are concerned at this year's Car Week.
Well, I know that BMW will be showing at least a couple of concept vehicles, one of which is relatively current, one of which is a little bit older, and we'll have more on that once they actually take the wraps off. I believe Pagani is bringing a couple of vehicles. I believe that Lotus is going to be showing its first electric hypercar.
It's supposed to be what?
This is something that they're saying is a couple thousand horsepower or something like that.
1972.
Yeah.
Horsepower.
Wow. Who needs that much horsepower? Oh, I guess we all do.
Everyone.
Everyone.
I don't know that anybody needs it, but that's not really the point.
Well, I need it because it helps me become more level. If I have more horsepower, I'm much happier. Therefore, I'm not such an angry individual.
Yeah, whatever works for you.
They're showing an NSX. The NSX has been out in 2016, or they sort of come out with new colors around Pebble. They've sort of they freshen it up a little bit.
Exactly. They've got they're gonna and that often happens with any kind of vehicle that's been out for a little bit. They'll have a special edition kind of increase the interest, and so there'll be a special edition of the NSX. There'll be, I'm sure, special editions of Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Mercedes, and Lexus typically has some vehicles on display. Like you mentioned, Aston Martin is going to be showing vehicles.
Porsche.
It is really car heaven for anybody who's never been. It's almost overwhelming.
I'm actually excited about the debut of the new Aston Martin DBX, which is they've had a concept version of their SUV, but SUV seems to be where all the money is. The Lamborghini Urus is the only luxury SUV that I probably really own myself. I'm just besotted with that vehicle. But the SUVs seem to be where the power is in the performance car market right now, and Aston, one of the last companies to get into it, but they're getting into it.
They are, and in fact, I think it is going to be a sneak peek, although it may not be ready to show to the public yet, so they may still have to wait a little bit before the general public gets to see it, but it is an indication that this car is coming soon.
I think it's a closed room showing for those people that they like. And then there's the whole auction thing that goes on at Pebble Beach, the car week, where cars sell for stupid amounts of money, like $27 million for the Nart Spider about 3 years ago.
Right, or $45 million for the Ferrari GTO last year.
Right. I mean, who buys this? Give me a name and address of someone that's spending $45 million on a car.
Fuchs, isn't it? Michael Fuchs.
And you know that...
Is he single? No.
That's the crazy thing is, these aren't their daily drivers. If you're buying a $45 million Ferrari, it's to add to your collection of other $40 million Ferraris.
I hate it when I can't afford a $45 million Ferrari.
Same.
Rolls-Royce will be showing off. I'm actually hosting the Rolls-Royce party this year on the Friday night for Rolls-Royce. And so I'll be announcing and talking to Richard Carter about all the new Rolls-Royces that are on display and being shown at this year. They make several special editions, so that's exciting. And we're also spending some time driving the new Lamborghini Huracan Evo Spider, which is probably one of the longest names of cars. So there is opportunities to drive some of these cars as well for selected individuals.
That's true, and actually I'll be taking a Lamborghini Huracan Evo Spider out for a couple hours as well, and spending a couple hours in a Rolls-Royce of some sort. I have not been told which Rolls-Royce I'll be driving, but they don't have any bad ones, so I'm really not
both ladies in the studio, Megan and Jen, are both sticking their tongues at the microphone right now because they're very disgusted with both of us.
Gag.
It sounds like y'all are going to have a real hard week.
Yeah, I know, right?
You have no idea how many TV segments and articles we have to run.
Cry me a river.
I was going to say it is the most fun I have probably all year, and it's the hardest I work over 5 days of the entire year.
Right. Well,
and it's mainly the logistics. There's so many different locations you're trying to get to.
True.
It becomes a nightmare to get around. It's amazing and horribly difficult to do at the same time.
I will tell you that the getting around at Pebble Beach is something that takes my breath away because it takes you 2 hours to go a mile and a half. It's unbelievable.
They don't get you a chauffeur?
Yeah, they do, but you sit in traffic for 2 hours going a mile and a half. It's pretty horrific.
Can you get a golf cart?
No, it's just everybody's trying to do the same thing. People just dump their cars and walk at some point. Perry Stern, thank you very much.
Jetpack is the way to go.
Jetpack, absolutely. Perry Stern from MSN Autos, and of course you can read his stuff at ourautoexpert.com. Online, all the social media will point back to that website so you can read Perry's stuff there and enjoy some of his fabulous Pebble Beach stories in the coming weeks. We'll be back talking to Anton Wahlman when we return.
You're listening to the Our Auto Expert podcast.
Welcome back to the show. We had a chance to talk about self-driving cars earlier on in the show. But Anton Wahlman joining us now. He is our independent analyst and investor. You can read much of his stuff at seekingalpha.com. He looks at the auto industry every week and does an analysis. So, Anton, one of the things that came up in an earlier discussion was the whole Netflix inside Tesla vehicles. Is this exciting, or is it frightening the community of drivers in the United States?
No, I mean, I think the proposition, first of all, is ridiculous on a far more fundamental level than anything that has to do with driver safety, and that is that we have been able for several years now to consume video services of any flavor, YouTube, Netflix, the pornographic kind, whatever the flavors that people prefer, and people do this on their own smaller devices, be it smartphones, tablets, or laptops, and those are perfectly portable. They can be held at any shape or form inside a car, and people do them. Kids sit with them in the back seat. Parents often look at them while they're sitting in the front seat. Some even do it while driving, even though they're not supposed to. Adding the ability to actually have this play on the screen in front of the driver really doesn't, in my opinion, fundamentally change the equation at all. So I think this is more of a little bit of a clickbait type situation where this is a bit of a headline grabber that somebody's actually going to actually offer this a standard in an automobile, when in reality people who can do this right now today and have been able to do so for over half a decade already.
So this announcement by Elon is really just something that makes more publicity for him. It's not really any advancement.
Well, it's similar to all of the games that you can play in a Tesla today. Under the Easter egg features inside a Tesla, you can click on them and you have, I think it's close to a dozen different games now. I'm not a gamer. I wouldn't play games. I see no point in playing games. I think the whole thing is stupid, meaningless, crazy, counterproductive, all the bad things. So I don't do it. But if I wanted to play a game, I can play it on my phone. I can play it on my tablet. I can play it on my laptop. And why would I play it on the center screen in the automobile? That's almost crazy. Think about even such basic things like getting quick updates, getting the latest version of a game, all of those things, the best controls by which you control with your thumbs, some sort of other contraption. I mean, the stuff that's built into the car, even though it will be updated sometimes, is not going to be optimal for the gaming experience. So this is a way to get headlines. And the headlines is that, wow, look, Ma, look over here. This thing can, fly. It can burp. It can do whatever. And it doesn't really add anything to the end user. So it's certainly a very clever way for a company to get a lot of free publicity.
Is this sort of the magician's look over here while this is happening over here scenario, and Tesla have problems in other areas, so they're trying to find good publicity with things like putting Netflix inside a vehicle?
I think that is one half of the equation. I think the other half is actually a somewhat clever sales tactic, and that is that the people who will be most impressed by this superficially are going to be kids. And who influences parents in terms of their purchasing decisions on all sorts of things? It's often kids. When the kids say, hey, Mom, look here, Dad, look here, Mom, we want you to buy this, we want you to do that. buy that thing, buy whatever. And in this case, it may end up influencing some people's car purchasing decisions. So I think that is sort of the clever part of it. And the other part, the more sinister part, is the one that you're alluding to, which is to say, well, this is going to certainly distract from the company's all other scandals and problems. And I think that is also true. So I think those are the two main reasons.
What in the 30 seconds that we have left, Anton, what are Tesla's big problems right now?
Well, let's just take up the one that came up again this week, which is the autopilot stuff. You may have seen that the former head of our government regulatory body, who is now working for Consumer Reports, asked that the government take a very serious look at Tesla's autopilot functionality to see if it really passes the safety muster. And the company is basically stonewalling all of these things, and as a result, that is sort of it's going to be a very important issue that has to be resolved here over the next many months.
All right, Anton Wahlman, he is our independent analyst and investor. We're talking about Tesla, and when we return, we're going to talk a little more about Tesla. And the fact is, it's very hard to stay neutral when you talk about self-driving cars. It's a car company who have some great technologies, but one of the massive lacking things that they have is the fact that their business plan does mean a loss in every single car that they sell. That loss is getting a little smaller, but it's still there. So the more cars they sell, technically, the bigger loss.
You're listening to Our Auto Expert.
On the phone with us, Anton Wahlman. We're talking about Tesla, and we're talking about some things involving the business of the car company. So, Anton, a lot of people, we heard earlier today about surveys out that it seems to be relaxing as far as self-driving cars are concerned. People seem to be less worried about them now than they were maybe 2 or 3 years ago. The environment for self-driving cars seems to be softening, but Tesla isn't helping that case necessarily, is it, with its accidents and with the fact that it hasn't made a good business case for a company like this, even Uber announcing huge losses recently, which they've invested a huge amount of money in self-driving cars.
Going on in the market in terms of what the consumers really believe is going on and will soon be happening, because the surveys are a bit contradictory on this. On the one hand, many surveys are showing that a lot of people somehow believe that the capabilities of what is coming out already right now are greater than what they really are, meaning some people believe that we really today have essentially self-driving cars that are available for purchase, and that is clearly not the case. Yet, a lot of people are also very skeptic that we will, I guess that's the other half of the population are extremely skeptic that they will ever want to ride in any of these self-driving vehicles, even if they were to become available soon. So I think that the surveys in terms of what the broader public believes are very unclear at this point. I mean, I think we have a clear case of simply a lack of knowledge in the market as to what is actually happening, and I don't think really we can rely therefore very much on these consumer surveys yet, because people are simply not understanding of what is out there and what is coming out there, and more importantly, what is not going to be happening out there. And much of this, of course, Tesla has contributed to the confusion by saying that they, will have cars that will have so-called self-driving, full self-driving coming out here in just a matter of months. They say that they will be so-called feature complete by the end of the year. Well, what does that mean? Well, the company's very unclear about this. They say that the car will simply be able to drive itself. Well, does it mean that it will be able to drive itself legally? Well, clearly not. Will it be able to drive itself safely? Well, the company says that there's going to be required a lot of data over a lot of time in order to convince people and regulators that the cars are indeed safe. And of course, that will not happen in a matter of a few months from now. They'll take many, many years. So that's why I think Tesla has not been very helpful in clarifying and setting. This is a clear case where you need to set the expectations low. And then, if you can exceed them, God bless you. But you do not want to set expectations very high that you can basically take a little nap behind the wheel when the car is really not capable of doing so, because you can imagine the mayhem that this is going to cause. And we see, I mean, just look it up on YouTube any day you want, examples of how people are jumping into the back seat for a few seconds and basically playing chicken with everybody around them. I mean, there are all sorts of crazy examples here. So, I mean, we can just imagine what this will spread here over the next year or two as this mushrooms. And this needs to be watched very carefully. And I think that the regulators are going to take a heavier hand on this pretty soon. I think we're months away from the regulators laying down the law on this a little bit more firmer than they have done to date.
One thing that makes me chuckle this week, the list of most stolen cars in the United States came out. And those at the top are the sort of cars that you'd expect. The Dodge Charger with a Hemi engine, the Dodge Challenger SRT Hellcat, Infiniti Q50, QX80, GMC Sierra, just big, very powerful vehicles. At the bottom of the list, the Tesla Model X and Model S, thieves don't even want to steal them.
Well, because they're being recorded.
Well, yeah, that's where it's also harder, to steal an electric car in general, or people perceive them to be harder to steal. What is not harder, however, and where we see an epidemic, if you look at the San Francisco Bay Area, for example, the car thefts are one thing, but break-ins is another one. There's an absolute epidemic of people that have had their Teslas broken into, especially the Model 3. They basically smash the rear sort of quarter window, and then they fall down the seat, and they sort of get into the trunk from there. And there's an enormous epidemic of that. So car thefts, I think electric cars in general are very, very low on the list. If for no other reason, thieves may perceive that, wow, even if I manage to steal them, how far do I get before I have to plug them in? And oh, by the way, when I plug them in, there's an electronic record of where I am. So let's say I steal this Tesla, right, and I go to a supercharger and I plug it in. Well, guess what? The supercharger, of course, communicates the data to, hey, this car, which, oh, by the way, has just been stolen, just plug in. He plugged in here 10 miles down the road from where it was stolen. Well, guess what? The cops are going to be there hopefully in about 90 seconds. So, these are not the most ideal cars that thieves probably would like to steal. However, breaking into them, completely different story.
That's the nicest thing I've ever heard you say about Tesla.
Megan's calling you out, saying it's the nicest thing you've ever said about Tesla. I noticed online this week there was a Tesla Model S that was converted into a hearse for sale. They wanted $200,000 for it. But as a rule, the whole aftermarket segment for cars, electric cars, is really not been taken off. Do you think that will take off? We may see a SEMA electric show where we could do aftermarket stuff with electric cars in the future, because people aren't really that familiar with the technology.
I do think that will happen, and I do think that you'll see some very creative things in the area, for example, of RVs. Obviously RVs are not suitable for electricity for long distances, but you can create very interesting showpieces, when you have the flexibility of an electric powertrain and what it can do. So I think that if you just want to create something really, showy that you can put up there, that obviously would not be suitable for long haul vacations into the Rocky Mountains, perhaps, but will make for an enormously beautiful thing to show off at a car show. I think RVs will be one of the vectors in which electrical vehicles will really bring something new to the party.
Now, electric vehicles traditionally haven't reached very good resale value. In fact, you could probably go out now and get a Nissan Leaf that is one of the first editions. You can pick them up for between $7,000 and $12,000, depending on what sort of deal that you find, for a gently used version of the vehicle. A lot of people believing that the batteries don't last that long. With the auctions at Pebble Beach and those type of things, do you think that we'll see resales of some classic electric cars like the EV1 eventually at places like that? There will be electric categories in the auctions at Pebble Beach, or do you think electric cars are still somewhat disposable?
No, I think that we will not see many of those. I mean, the examples are going to have to go back to the turn of the previous century when we indeed had a handful of electric cars. And if you go to the National Auto Museum in Reno, Nevada, for example, you'll see one of those sitting there. And maybe an EV1, of which there are like about a half a dozen in existence still in the country. But I mean, at this point, creating a new EV is almost by its nature going to be a somewhat of a volume product. I mean, not, it doesn't mean millions a year, but it means not, super scarce in volume either. And they will, I don't think they will be very memorable, to be honest. I think that it's going to be very hard to make the case that these things will be museum pieces. I mean, ask yourself, are there museum pieces of a smartphone? The answer is no, and there won't be anyway. I mean, you'll have, like, just to make a point, you'll put, the original iPhone or something like that in the Museum of Modern Art. But, I mean, it's not something that people will actually trade at significant values for a very long time to come, if ever. So I would not bet a penny on any EVs that are actually coming out and into the market at this point to ever make it into collector status.
Maybe until 100 years in the future when we see the history evolving. Let me ask you about this, EVs as in general. Where is the next? We've seen the Audi, we've seen Mercedes that will be hitting the market soon. We've seen the Audi e-tron, which is now all over California and other states which have electric vehicles. Are we going to see a slew more between now and January? I know Mini's slated for their first EV.
Well, I think the two that will be making the biggest splash in the market, not necessarily in all geographies simultaneously, are first of all the Porsche Taycan, which will make its debut in Frankfurt on September 9. Porsche's first electric car, which seems to have struck a good balance between sort of looking like a Panamera that's lost a few pounds, although it really hasn't lost a few pounds, but it looks like it has. So they've just started publishing some performance data on that, and I think the car is going to be beautiful, and I think it'll do very, very well. It'll be sold all over the world. The other one, which will not be making it to the United States, but which will be a really a prime seller in Europe, is going to be the Volkswagen ID.3. Think of it as the next generation all-electric Golf. We have, of course, had an electric Golf in the market for about 5 years now, and it sold sort of okay for what it was worth. Didn't sell so much the first 2 or 3 years, but in the last 2 years here, it sold rather well, especially in Europe. But this one is going to be purpose-built from the ground up. It'll be rear-wheel drive, believe it or not. It's actually the team that once upon a time, 3.5 years ago, left BMW to join Volkswagen that engineered this product. And this car is really designed to fit the European tastes in terms of a square-ish hatchback, most prominently. Of course, Americans do not buy that type of vehicle, and Volkswagen determined very early on that we're not going to even bother engineering that vehicle for U.S. crash standards, so it will never make it to the U.S. We here in the U.S. will instead get a crossover version that will have all-wheel drive as standard, and that will come out, about almost 1 year later. So it'll get to the United States at the extreme tail end of 2020, whereas the production of the European one, the sort of Golf, the electric Golf next generation, starts at the end of this year, and deliveries in Europe should start approximately by April of next year.
I look at these Europe versus America in electric cars, and in Europe there's a lot of electric assisted bicycles. There are a lot of smaller cars. I mean, Norway, of course, and Sweden is the place you go to look at these vehicles. You drive around and you see because of legislation, but all these electric vehicles, and they seem to be in every man's car. When you come to the United States, it seems to be only the rich that can afford these vehicles.
Yeah, no, clearly the main difference here, there's part of it's a little bit cultural, we had to help them out a couple of times over the last century. They would have spoken Russian or German or something had we not helped these poor people to defend themselves. The other part of it is that we here in the United States like larger vehicles, and we do not have as many electric car subsidies or mandates as they have in Europe. Keep in mind that there are many countries in Europe that have enormous subsidies, both in terms of purchase price, also legislative mandates, as well as enormous tax benefits if you lease the car as a corporation. So the UK, for example, will start in April of next year with a tremendously beneficial tax legislation that is going to drive adoption of electric cars in the UK to enormous levels that you have never thought of before.
No, I agree. Anton Wahlman, you can read much of his stuff at seekingalpha.com. He is our independent analyst and investor investor, and he joins us every week. Thank you, Anton. If you want to listen to previous versions of the show, you can go to ourautoexpert.com. They're all listed there. We are nationally celebrated and locally created. You'll find us all on our social media channels all week long. You can message us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram and see the latest stories. Thank you to Megan and Jen for joining us in the studio. Thank you to being our loyal audience, and we will see you again next week at the same time.
You've been listening to Our Auto Expert with Nick Mile. Find all the show episodes at ourautoexpert.com. Please follow us on all social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Our Auto Expert, and message us for a quick and witty response.